All right. Welcome everyone. We're going to be running through our prototyping hardware accelerator info session today. My name is Deanna Coker. I'm the associate director of our hardware programs here at Rev. So what we're going to run through, we're going to start with team and philosophy. Then we're going to roll into the structure of the program. So the basics of what you would need to know about how the program will work, the facility that we have here at Rev and expectations of joining the program. So what does participation look like and what should you expect to come away with at the end of the program? And then all of the resources that are tied in and around this program. So we're going to try and give you a pretty comprehensive picture of what to expect. As I mentioned, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A or in the chat, and we will field them at the end. Or if I see something jump up that seems really relevant in the moment, I'll try to tackle it as I go. We will probably wrap up a little bit early today, so expect that we will be running to about it's 4:30, about 5 o'clock, and then we'll have a few minutes after that for Q&A. So a little bit about us here at Rev. We've got a mix of folks. Ken Rother is our founding director of the hardware program. So he's been running this program specifically for the last 14 years. I am Deanna. I'm the associate director of our hardware programs. We have Anna and then Hazen, who are also full-time engineers with myself. Anna has a background in electronics, and Hazen is more focused on the product mechanical design side of things. And then our program support team, we could not run this program without them. We have Maya and Adam. Maya, do you want to intro yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Maya Minter. I am the program associate who's the hardware accelerator lead. And so I kind of help to keep the train on the tracks, confirm speakers, schedule things, make sure that the participants have communication around what's going on in the program. So if things are going smoothly, I've done my job. It's good to see you all on here and excited to have you learn more. And Adam, is another program associate with us. He probably will be doing some work with the cohort over the summer, just to support and make sure people are, know where they need to go and getting their assignments and things like that. So good to see you all.
And I like to point out here that you'll notice none of our program support is run by AIs. So if you do apply to the program, you will be talking specifically with a human who is behind the email. You will not be getting automated responses. We'll talk more about applying as we get to the end of the deck. Some general things you should know about our team here at Rev. So we're a mix of different people. We have a good group of engineers. So myself, Anna, and Hasten are our primary hardware engineers that are full-time here at Rev, but we have quite a mix of undergraduate, graduate students, and a variety of different friends and family of engineers that have supported our different teams throughout the years. We have some Cornell faculty and student connections as well. As I mentioned, we have a pretty good mix of experienced entrepreneurs, and at this point, a good mix of alumni as well, and technical mentors, so manufacturing partners or folks who are from design firms that aren't necessarily on our team but help us with guest talks and so on. Our philosophy across all of our hardware accelerators, if you learn anything about hardware at Rev today, it's that everything we do focuses on developing a business model and a technology in parallel. So it doesn't do you a ton of good if you have a fantastic business model, but you don't have the engineers or the technology doesn't exist to build the thing you want to do. And on the flip side, it doesn't do you much good if you develop this really cool thing that no one wants or that you can't sustain as a business. And so that's what our philosophy revolves around, is making sure that you're doing both. We practice lean startup methodology. We are very focused on involving the customer in the process. And we really try to surround you with support. So, like I mentioned, we have a big group of people from engineers to entrepreneurs to alumni, and we're here to help you move forward. Everything that we do over the course of this program is focused on validating, using data to support your decision making as you prototype, iterate, and talk to customers. We've been running this specific accelerator since 2014, so that's rolling on 12 years now. We've had over 100 teams to date and raised quite a bit of money from some of those teams. But it's equally important here to mention that if you have an idea and you are looking to test it out, see if this is worth your time, this is a great place to do it. We have just as many teams, if not more teams, spend the summer developing this just to find out, you know what? There isn't a customer that wants this. I am not going to go spend $20,000 trying to develop this idea only to find out it's not commercially viable. So that's equally as an important of an approach here. We have a handful of teams that do move on, launch successful Kickstarters, get SBIR grants, and get venture capital. But we also have a number of people that make a good decision to say, this isn't the right idea. Let me come back in a year, or I have something else that I'm going to run with and take those entrepreneurship skills with you. The program goals overall are threefold. Validating that business model. So we're really focused on establishing what the customer segment is and what the value proposition is for that customer. Then we look at prototyping and developing a looks like, a works like, or maybe an integrated prototype, depending on the complexity of what you're developing. And then taking those two things and combining them into developing a marketing asset and a pitch. So you will be having a presentation at our demo day or networking event and doing things like building a landing page, developing that pitch deck. So you are leaving also with something that is forward looking that you can take out to talk about your idea, your business model, and your prototype. Here's a little bit about our development process. And so I'm going to take a second on this slide because this is a really important methodology of how we approach the prototyping program and what you should expect from a stage kind of positioning of prototyping. So we run three different accelerators. You'll see prototyping, protofactoring, and manufacturing. Prototyping is our earliest of the bunch. So if you don't have anything beyond an idea of a customer and a napkin sketch, that's fine. This is the point to enter prototyping. You can't enter protofactoring at that stage, and you're definitely not entering manufacturing. So the goal here is to catch early prototypes or early ideas and then get you up to maybe a proof of concept or an MVP. That's roughly kind of the stage that we see most people in. We're going to work through that identifying the problem, pairing with a customer, drafting a business model, doing that initial prototyping, and hopefully at the end of the program, you have some evidence to say, I either can or can't do this. That's that proof of concept stage. Now, we've also had people join the program that are a little bit later in the development process. That's also an option, but what we're looking for is people who are going to be doing something new. So maybe you've prototyped something, but you know there's a module or there's an element that you've basically got to do from scratch and you just haven't started it yet. That could be a valid way to enter this program. We've had some established companies who are starting with off-the-shelf solutions, but they know they want to develop a custom material or they're going to make a custom form factor for this part of it, where they have joined prototyping specifically so that their team can focus on that aspect of development. It's not as common as just starting from the beginning, but we do see that as well. And we also see people come in with proof of concept prototypes, but they know they've got a lot of work to do before they get to that MVP. Also valid. If you are at an engineering prototype, however, you are probably too far along for this program. The program itself is broken into four different tracks. So we have a climate tech track, an ag tech track, a med tech track, and a classic track. These are all just to say ways of looking at your technology. We want to make sure that we have the right mentors in place to support your specific product. So we know that if we have 15 med tech teams, that would be a crazy high number of med tech teams for what we normally take. We know we need a lot of med tech mentors, right? So these are really just ways that we classify you so that we can think about who to pair you with and what resources to offer. It is not to say there are quotas for each of these tracks. So we're going to talk about each of these tracks, but this is not, we're only taking 5 med tech and 5 ag tech and 5 climate tech. So it's really important which one you apply to. Not the case. It's important that you apply, and then we'll help you sort out what track you're in. We do have some sector-specific site visits. So we always plan one for med tech because there's so much that's going into med tech specifically. But we do look at how many folks we have in each track to figure out if there's anything else that we need to offer. We have industry and sector-specific mentors, and we will also be pulling in expert office hours this year. This is something new that we're excited to be offering. So again, based on who we have in each track, we're going to pull in different experts. If you're in the classic track, you can join any of these events. This is just a way for us to understand your product. There are some limitations for site visits when we have space limitations, but generally speaking, if you want to go or you want to engage in any of these resources, it's available to you. So just a little bit more about the tracks and just the note here on the right-hand side, you're going to see that all these tracks have a $2,000 stipend. It's the same for each track, so you'll see that's reflected across the board. Our climate tech teams are supporting decarbonization of the economy. And I want to highlight that this means that if you are a really strong candidate for climate tech, you are not just making a sustainable product. You're not just using a biodegradable plastic for the enclosure of your device that helps you navigate your day-to-day life, right? You are doing something that is specifically addressing like a root cause. You're trying to reduce carbon impact. If you fit this category, you would get climate tech specific mentorship when we have that available, and you get a variety of different resources on greenhouse gas emissions, life cycle analyses, and some circular design principles. The Ag Tech track is sponsored by a university center program focused on products that are looking to cut down the environmental impacts of farming. Maybe it is something for farmers, maybe it's for farm animals. There is specific interest in food security and climate protection, but really anything that's around farming animals, food. The only restriction here is that you cannot be a food specifically, but if you are a machine that helps with food, then you have hardware and you qualify for hardware. We just don't specifically work with food products. So if you're making a new yogurt, we've got a separate program for that. We're happy to talk about getting you set up with the right folks here to jump into one of those programs. Our MedTech tracks funded by a Build to Scale grant from the US EDA. We do partner with Weill Cornell for this. We have field trips to different med tech facilities, workshops on regulatory pathways, clinical trials, and manufacturing requirements. And I also like to flag for med tech that it is okay if you are planning to release as a consumer product. So maybe you're not going for a clinical direction up front. That's okay. You can still be eligible for this track. And we actually see that quite commonly because clinical trials and FDA approval are a pretty long pathway. And so it is valid if that's not a requirement for you. You can still be medtech. That is something that we talk about and we strategize with you to help figure out what makes the most sense. And the classic track is kind of the catch-all for anything else that is hardware that is not in one of those tracks. The restriction here is it has to be hardware. Generally, we say that's things that are software wrapped in plastic, but you don't have to actually have any electronics. If you are developing a really cool custom new, I'm looking at my tea, so maybe you're looking at a new mug. Probably not looking at a new mug, but that would still be eligible for the program. The only thing that's not eligible, like I said, is food or things that are software only. So if you are a dashboard or a platform and you do not have any hardware, you are not eligible for this program because we need to build something. If you are primarily a dashboard, but you do need to build a custom device to work with your dashboard or a custom sensor, now we're back in business. So it's only if you are exclusively software that you would not be eligible for this program. We get a lot of stuff that falls into this category. So by saying classic track, it's very uninteresting, but we get a lot of femtech, wearables, social good products. We've had nonprofits with physical products join our programs. So we get a lot of really cool stuff that falls into this category.
Deanna, there's a question in the chat about are there products too simple that you don't work with?
No, I think that's my full answer. If something is very simple, it just means that there's maybe different support. You wouldn't need as many of our engineers. I wouldn't be throwing an electrical and a hardware, a mechanical engineer at you all at once. But that doesn't mean you're not eligible for the program. We've had stuff that is pretty straightforward, but you still need to figure out that customer angle. There's nothing wrong with simplicity here. Like I said, it's really just if you're not software and you're not food. Otherwise, we've had people that are doing like new chopsticks for helping, I forget what they were called, but like a different take on a chopstick where that doesn't have a crazy amount of complexity to it, but definitely has some design elements. When you apply, if you're thinking about applying, if so far I've not really, turned you off from looking at this program, then you are going to apply to the track that you feel is the most appropriate. If we look at your application and say, actually, this is medtech and ag tech, or this is ag tech and climate tech, or this is not medtech, we are going to just bump you if you get admitted. So we would let you know and we'd say, you know what, this makes more sense for you to be in these tracks, or you're going to be cross-listed. We'll just let you know. Just apply to the one that you think is the most appropriate. There's really no strict rules here. We're gonna read your application either way. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the structure of the program. This is a 10-week accelerator. We have 4 sprints and a boot camp at the beginning. So boot camp is 1 week, and then we've got 4 2-week sprints after that. On a daily basis, you're going to have access to our facility at Rev and to purchasing supplies for prototyping. And on a weekly basis, you will have presentations, workshops, technical meetings, and assigned mentor meetings. The program starts right after Memorial Day. So that first week, Tuesday to Friday, that's boot camp. That's really important. That's basically a full-time commitment because we have to get shop training and things out of the way. And then we have those 4 sprints over the summer we have a week off around 4th of July. So there is a 1 week break, and that's a chance where there's absolutely no programming. You're welcome to be at Rev if you're still going, but there's no requirement. So that's a good chance if you're from out of state and you do want to go home, this is the time to do it. Boot Camp Week, like I said, is the only program where we would say it's basically a full-time commitment. We're going through program orientation, we're talking about software and different resources, doing our introduction to customer discovery and the business model canvas, and covering shop training. Shop training is an all-day event, so that's really important. That's the first week of the program. Then the first sprint, it looks a little bit different for different people. We call it the feasibility sprint because if you're starting out with a napkin sketch, then this is when we look at feasibility and different ways you could solve the problem. But we adjust your goals based on your team and your status. But the content is focusing on determining your market opportunities and developing your BMC, identifying technical challenges and possible solutions. That might be looking at technical challenges you've already identified and existing solutions. Looking at product and market specifications. So, what is your customer saying? What are you hearing? And what do you need to do for them? And prototyping. We do start prototyping in the first week and we roll that into our first sprint. Our second sprint now, we've done the feasibility study and we're starting to dig in a little bit deeper. So we are going to focus on validating the core technology. This is where we really start driving at that proof of concept. We're creating wireframes, system diagrams, and looking at other ways to model and understand your system. We have workshops on IP, so you can think about what is my IP strategy? What do I have to protect, especially as you go on in the program, so that you understand what to talk about and not to talk about, developing your MVP and focusing on what your entrepreneurial strategy is. And then we wrap up with a sprint review where we're starting to see a design direction come out with your prototype. Sprint 3 is our proof of concept sprint. So we're building on our established prototypes, and now we're looking at what is the strategy. What do you need that's most important for your product? So we had a question about a simple product. This is an example where you're probably going to make a looks like prototype or an integrated prototype because it is more straightforward. So you can get farther, right? But we're going to figure out based on your technology, based on how complicated the product is, what type of prototype is going to help you the most. We're going to be going through a lot of iterations. You're going to be buying a lot of stuff in this sprint and really iterating on as much as possible. Workshops are going to focus on marketing strategy, industrial design, different funding sources, and how you want to fund your business or your company or your product, whatever level you're thinking at here. And again, concluding with a sprint review. And now our last sprint, I like to call this kind of the cleanup sprint because we were crawling through prototyping and a lot of different material through the course of the program. Now we have to focus on cleaning things up for pitching and for demo day. So we are now thinking about networking night. You're going to be pitching, you're going to be tabling your prototype, and you're thinking about what can you learn from the audience coming and what do you need to showcase in your pitch. So we're going to have some workshops on talking about future funding opportunities and how to handle negotiations, and we're going to have a lot of pitch practice built in. What should you expect? With the exception of boot camp week, we consider this about a 20-hour a week in-person commitment. So between sessions, meetings, and things that you just have to do at Rev, you should expect to be here at about 20 hours per week. That looks differently for everyone, and if you have multiple people on your team, sure, to some extent you can divide that up, but that's what my ballpark expectation is for you. Of course, if you're committing more than that, you will probably get farther in the course of the program. We expect you to participate in all content sessions, so we'll be laying out at the beginning what the mandatory sessions are. We do have a few that are optional, but we lay that out in the syllabus. You'll be meeting weekly with instructors, so engineers and your entrepreneur in residence that you'll be working with to help mentor and guide the business side of things. You will be doing customer discovery interviews. You will have to go out into the world and find your customer and talk to them and learn about their problems. And then you'll have assignments that you will be completing as well to help mark your progress. This is an in-person program. You are going to be required to be in Ithaca, New York, and use the facility at Rev to prototype. If you have access to other facilities to prototype, you are welcome to use them, but you will be required to be at Rev for content sessions and other events that are not available virtually, which is most of them. If you have more than one person on your team, you only need to send one person, but you need to then consider that that person is going to be doing that minimum of 20 hours a week. Here's an example of a weekly schedule. Because not everyone is based in Ithaca or not everyone is fully committed to their idea just yet. Some people are working part-time roles or have other jobs. We've front-loaded most of the schedule to be on Monday and Tuesday. So most of the in-person requirements are going to be on Monday, Tuesday on any given week. Now, Wednesdays, we do occasionally have some site visits depending on what programming and what week it is. There's no required programming on Thursdays, but we are looking to have expert office hours. Sometimes those will be in person, sometimes those will be virtual. It's going to be based on the teams that we have. We look at the cohort and pull in specific experts to match what we need. And then every other Friday morning, you would have a sprint review. That's the only time you would need to be here on a Friday is if we have a sprint review in the morning, and those are every other week. So there's some floating things Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but the goal is to keep all of the things where you should expect to be here at least a half day on Monday and Tuesday. The schedule is front loaded to the front half of the summer so that as we get towards the end, closer to demo day, you've got more time to be prototyping and running around, making sure that you've got everything you needed to be tied up for the networking night. Our facility here at Rev, I like to say that we've got a little bit of everything. We can do basically anything that fits in a small box. If you think about most desktop machines, they're anywhere from 18 inches by 12 inches and down. So if your product is really big, we're going to have to talk about how we'd handle that. But we can work with metals, we can work with plastics, we've done silicones and rubbers and textiles and electronics, anything that fits in that kind of size frame of, a little bit bigger than your laptop or something that fits on a desktop type machine, we've worked with. We've got two laser cutters, three CNCs, seven 3D printers, a water jet cutter, a small scale injection molder, a PCB mill, a PCB printer, a pick and place, assembly space, engineers on staff to help support your products. It's a pretty well-rounded facility in terms of what the machines are and who we have here to help support you. Just to quickly recap on resources, things that you would get if you are in this program. 24/7 shop access and shop training on the relevant equipment. Access to the workspace at Rev. So if you're looking for a co-working space, you would also have access to the general Rev area for co-working, a few meeting spaces and things like that. A handful of hardware workshops and business workshops, business mentorship, technical support, and technical mentorship. That is both guidance as well as hands-on support, depending on what you need. You get a $2,000 prototyping stipend that needs to be used during the course of the program. I can talk more about that if there's any questions. And you would get a personalized content schedule based on your track and your experience and your product. And that's all I got. So if you are interested, here's the QR code to apply. I believe, Maya, do you also have the link to drop in chat? Yep. So you'll also have the link coming through the chat. The application is very, very short. It's only going to take you about 15 minutes if you've got all your materials or your ideas together. I encourage you to apply early. We do have an early admission window. And the idea there is that if you are out of state, you have a decision very quickly, hopefully, so that you can figure out making arrangements to be here for the summer and manage your schedule. Regular admission, final decisions are made by March 22nd. So if you have questions, feel free to email the Rev at Rev Ithaca email. It goes to someone like Maya who's going to field any questions that you might have and send them back. But I want to take this time now to open up for anything that I didn't talk about, any other questions that we might have about the program, the structure, support. I will leave this link up for just a minute here, but if there are any other questions, I'm happy to field them now. One of the questions, and I think actually I should make sure to hit on this. As you're all thinking, in case I've hit on everything, one of the questions that we do get a lot is about IP and ownership. So we do have engineers. We usually have anywhere from 8 to 11 to 12 engineers on staff over the summer, both student and professional, to help develop products. We do not take any IP, we do not take any equity. There is no cost to join this program. We would talk with you if you already have some IP or you're worried about your IP. We'd talk with you about how to manage that through the course of the program so that it's not a concern for you. But we do not take any IP or equity. Cornell owns nothing. This is a grant-funded program. We are here to help you move your ideas forward. So that is a question that we get pretty often that I want to make sure we address while we're on today.